So I decided to start this video, this tour, by actually getting lost. Fortunately, it all happened off camera. But now I'm here, so I intend to clip this later, or at least highlight it, cut out the AFKs, anything excess where anything went wrong or anything like that, and then post it to YouTube and also keep it as a permanent VOD on Twitch. But I'm gonna try and keep it light. I want to get through this in one stream, which I won't do if I spend too much time talking about the actual lore of the game, of the Minecraft world, or the history of the world. The difference being the real world history, that is. So, having said all that, let's get cracking. We're actually here at Edorahn. It's actually a name I'm only just giving it in the last week or so. I just referred to it as Edorahn for the most part, but that's actually inaccurate. Edorahn is a city over there, or partly over there anyway. My intention was to actually put the remains of a city in here, but that hasn't, I just haven't come back here to do anything like that. There are things to be done here, and you're going to hear that phrase a lot over the next few hours. So we're looking, though, at as where it began. This is the first building. It's pretty fancy. The level of decoration seems to disappear in later builds. I'm looking at it now and thinking, I don't do this kind of stuff. I don't do this with wooden roofs. I don't do this with stone roofs anymore. This is really fancy for me, I would say. It's also some interesting features as well. I don't use stone anymore. I can't even remember the last time I used stone to do something like this on a build. Although, to be honest, I would probably use andesite these days if I did do something like this. And the thing is, as well, you won't see any andesite here because this building is too old. The title says 13 years, and this was finished toward the end of November in 2012. Now the Empire didn't exist yet, not as an idea. That would come at some point in the near future. There's one other build that needs to go in place for the idea to be able to take root. We'll probably see that. Well, we'll see that, but a little bit later. I'm going to try going through the Empire in some sort of reasonable order that will minimize the amount of travel time without me skipping around too much with teleports as well, because I've done a terrible job of keeping track of coordinates. So I have some, but I don't have enough to really do a decent job, and my stream is scuffed, if nothing else. So there's a few infrastructure pieces around here related to other just local buildings that you would expect to find, wealthy houses. There's a lot of internal work here. There's a lot of things just built straight into the sides of the hills. But this place isn't just the beginning of the idea of the Empire. It's also the beginning of the Empire itself. The Grey Knights founded the Edorahn, and it was from here that their entire organization expanded and eventually came to control most of northern Franklin. The place was eventually abandoned due to an uncontrollable zombie outbreak. They were just overrun. I think somebody survived up here, either for a very long time or eventually just they too were lost. But the swamp eventually grew back, which is why it's very swampy, and my intention is to put ruins in amongst the swamp. But again, like I said, the odds of me coming back and doing that, it's going to take something like, finishing the rest of the project. This is the entrance inside. This is not finished either. I would intend this to stay this way, but there is yeah. There was a bit to it, I was charging ahead full steam. I actually came back here to do this. This was not originally part of the original structure. There's been about 2 or 3 phases of building here. And as I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of building actually inside. And I need to be careful I don't end up completely lost. Oops. But putting aside the later parts, a fairly modest beginning. I mean, it's a large build. It wasn't the first thing I built in Minecraft. Not by any means. I didn't just drop into Minecraft and start doing this stuff. But there we are. Now, there should by rights have been more on this little continent that I'm on. Like just other structures further afield and stuff. You would expect them to have done that. But again, that's something that's not going to come around until much later in the day. This is an actual survival base. I was using this to work from. I don't know whether... I think this must have been done in survival, because if I'd done it in creative mode, they'd probably be bricks breaking up the image. I'm going to cut across to the minor continent of Rhodes. It is around here somewhere. Don't mind my computer. It's probably loading the deep slate regions. That when that was added, it basically backtracked and put it in every time it loaded a chunk for the first time. And there are just some locations I've never been to since that update was done. So this has not yet been incorporated into the Empire. If it does, I will destroy this. This was put here by somebody else. It's a long story, I won't go into it in this video, but yeah, I should, because I've actually built on the rest of the continent, just the other side of this jungle. So this represents the, well, actually we're on the border of New Edorahn. So this was the replacement city when Olde Edorahn was lost to zombies. And this is now on the fringe of the Empire. I'm not explaining that. Just ignore it. For some reason, all of the main cities are at the very edges of the Empire, which is kind of weird, but it is how it is. You can see now that this is very much later stage. This was probably 5 years ago, maybe. You can see the andesite is now in full use. Standardized methods for how to swap through blocks and swapping from stone to wood and incorporating different stone colors representing the biome shifts and things like that. You know, by this stage I had very much a fully worked out set of techniques that I was using. It's all still lacking. I do so much that I don't really get around to doing things like I'm doing now, you know, and just putting in little extra bits and pieces. There are no real interiors. There are floors, rooms, stairwells, but I never really do an actual interior. Let's just do a little bit of a flyby. Most of the cities always come with something cathedral-esque sat somewhere. So this is, and that's always done with the stone in the old style as close as possible. To indicate age. And then newer work is very much the old stone to wood transition. And yeah, I think I definitely, when it comes to wowing people, my approach is scale over, or not even scale, but scope. It's not that any individual build is huge, but the city itself covers a lot of ground. There's a lot of building here. You turn around and you're looking at something new. So this is one of the latest stage hovering ships. An attempt to splash some colouring. I always have a problem with my ships that I think it should probably be this long, about here, for the depth. It's too deep. This didn't come out too bad. I look at it now and I'm like, well, actually that doesn't look too bad, but at the time I was super not happy with it, which is why it's pretty much stayed the way it is, because I was just like, nope, not dealing with that anymore. It's very, very loosely modelled after the Mallard steam engine. And a triple-decker bridge. There's a footpath, a path for horses, and then there's the minecart ride. Very basic statues, really, just a fancy helmet, weapon in one hand, the lantern in the other. Unfinished work. Not really sure what that would have been. Looks like it may have intended to be some sort of fort. Just never finished it. This wasn't the first griffin I did. It's very... it's either a direct reconstruction, or I used to structure block. But I think this is identical to the griffin at Raven Guard. Although that one doesn't have a rider. Wings are very dynamic here. Don't usually go this hard in giving the wings some real shape and depth to them, as if it's in mid-beat. Over here, it's probably one of the most unique buildings I've ever put in the Empire, because it's actually a shopping mall. I can find my way through the place. Yeah, I'm terrible at digging out the dirt that needs to be removed. You know, I settled on this being the floor leveler. I just wasn't willing to take away all of the dirt. I usually blame it on Enderman, suggesting that they've been coming into the overworld and dumping dirt on the Grey Knight buildings. This is an old idea that doesn't actually work anymore, for reasons we'll probably get into at some point. Quite nice here as well. There's the stream hills giving one layer to the build, and then there's actually a second layer of buildings that are actually lower down on the ground, and they're connected by these waterways dug through some parts. But moving on. Got a little settlement here. I think it's custom. Sometimes settlements are built on top of special locations, which this one is. Deep Toil actually had a decency to name something for once. Didn't have to try and remember what it was called later. I should probably write that down because I'm almost positive that's not marked on the map. Yeah, you can see why this was called Deep Toil. Oh yeah, here we go. All the way to the bottom. Where are we? There we go. Yep. Because obviously somewhere beneath me is a bunch of deep slate now, but you know, we'll look over that. Ooh, diamond. It's a diamond. Yeah. Don't know what else I thought it could be. How did I get down here? This needs to be tidied up. I can't just leave a bunch of glowstone lining the way. When I'm done with the map, I'll need to come back and tidy some of these things up. But this is just a small artificial settlement. Some of them are actually built around pre-existing villages. But the ones that I do are often based on the village concept. So you know, got one I think is probably meant to be a blacksmith. Probably someone's house. Obviously the church building, although in the realm of the Grey Knights these are usually libraries. Philosophical centres rather than religious ones. Probably an inn. Anything that's got multiple roofs sticking out in funny directions is usually an inn. Again, this is one of those locations where I really need to come back and put a boat in place. I did for a while try to come up with like a generic boat that, you know, I just put it in a structure block. Every time I want a boat of a particular size, I can just get it out, change colors maybe, you know, do a whole change of all of the blocks involved, and just save myself a little bit of time so that I can more easily flesh out the empire. Funky sails on a mill. I usually go a little bit wild on the windmill sails. So this moves into the Unterhalls, which are a series of wealthy locations, basically in cities and dwellings built straight into the sides of the mountain. That's not right. It can't be right because you're supposed to be able to get through on a horse. I know you can, I've ridden it. There we go. Yeah, so there's a series of interconnections. The road essentially goes all the way through and brings together all of these locations. And then down here you've got another, it's a stable / inn, another library, another mining facility. I have no idea what's it sat on. Probably something I usually, as I said, I usually have it sat on something. Something relatively interesting as well. So. I actually just realised I've missed something, I think. There we go. This is one of the duns. These are places where they would come to bury their dead. Actually, there's a tremendous amount of it sat inside the hill. I feel like this really ought to be coal. So all of this that I've been showing you so far, Edorahn, the new Edorahn, was actually done all at once. Well, you know, I basically hit landfall. I'm going through it in the opposite direction that it was built. So we're getting closer and closer to the oldest part of the project. Yeah, this is a real labyrinth in some places. You go down here and then there's more below me. And then there's offshoots and stuff. It's actually possible to come out in a completely different location. If you're curious about the absence of glass, back in the early days, when my computer, which was actually 2 or 3 computers ago, really couldn't handle the alpha bending of using too much glass, particularly colored glass, and I ended up stopped using it. There's also no doors, but that's because I'm pretty much lazy. This is something I picked up from somebody else. Not super happy about it. It'd be nicer if the item frame didn't stand out quite so much. Gone in here. Somebody's watchtower. There's obviously going to be lots and lots of inns and small features. And again, doing myself a favour and actually giving the place a name, or at least writing the name down instead of leaving me to try and figure it out later. This is wit oil. Don't need to find a signpost for that. This is a very wealthy settlement getting its money from this mining facility. Oh, yeah, I call this wit oil. That's wit oil. This is wit hole. Now, this let's see if I've been really kind and actually put down the name of the boat. Nope. No, I am not. That's annoying. So this one's really fancy. I built this. I built the first version of this long before I got to do this one, and it's very far away from here, completely outside the Empire. And for some reason, rather than just pack it up in a structure block and bring it over here, I mean, I'm just going to have to change the colors anyway, so that's probably partly why I did it. But yeah, I rebuilt it here with all these fancy colors, but the general look of it is the same as the original. I'm not sure about the exact layout of the towers. But yeah, I really like the design. It just looks so nice from the front. Oh, there he is, okay. So this is, I mentioned earlier, this is the continent of Rhodes. So this is the Colossus of Rhodes. He's been built to double scale, roughly speaking, compared to my normal statues. I kind of quite liked him. I think if I become very adventurous with how the how the statues stand. So I think if I did this today, his feet would be further apart. He would be striking more of a defiant pose. But you know, I can't go back and rebuild everything just because I suddenly have a new way of doing something. It would be a nightmare. So as I say, this is wet oil, and as I've been mentioning, there's quite a bit underneath here. Very large ravine. I put in some infrastructure to make it easier to get down, but it has not really been explored. I have occasionally gone back to places like this in survival to go around them and just check them out. Then you can see why I've marked this one, because there's obviously one ravine connecting to the second ravine, and if you're really eagle-eyed, you may have noticed there is a third. And these are pretty big too, you know, we're not talking about slithers here. So yeah, you know, this is the sort of thing I like to bring attention to by sticking a great big build on top of it, and then encouraging people to go down and take a look. Wait, are there 4 ravines? Is this 4 ravines? Yeah, this is a 4th ravine. I'm gonna go for 5. Is there another one? There is another one. Wow. Yeah. This is insane. We do love Minecraft. Where were we? Going this way, that's where we were. So this is Brackencore, and we're now at the location where this began. You can't see it anymore, but there's an island in the middle of this, or just off the edge of this. Actually, yeah, a little bit of river cutting through there, and then you've got 2 pieces of land separated by another piece of water. And it had all of the look of a broken heart, hence Brackencore. Because of the shape of it, there was no way I could build anything all the way around, but I've given the suggestion of it. So these are on the same circle, and you can see I put down markers through the water to complete the pan, and there is a couple of bits and pieces down, incomplete, letting people come through. Did dig through? Is it connected, or did I have to dig it out? Yeah, I think I had to dig it out. What's going on here? Well, so that was Edorahn. Oh, look at that. Being adventurous. Could be bothered to do it on any of the other sides. Looks nice. We ought to do that more often. Of course, it's a bit of a pain in the ass. So I do have a vague idea about where this goes, because these markers are here for that reason. Oh, there we go. Unterman. Unterman is a submerged city. Not clear whether it was meant to be built like this, or fell in, or was sunk. It wasn't intended to be Atlantis, but or a parody, or you know, a tribute to Atlantis, but it is what it is. I'm pleased with some of what I did here. Some of my builds do have quite elaborate overhead designs to them. And yeah, I don't feel like I did too bad a job of carrying it through. I think maybe the roofing is a bit too bitty. The yeah, the green and the grey, is that just stone I'm using? Oh, I see, it's that. It's the stone slabs. What do they call these things? Smooth stone slab. Yeah, bit of a clash. One of those instances where I could do with covering the actual, yeah, I could do with covering the glowstone. Let's see what happens if I do this. Yeah, it's going to be a bit too white. It's going to stand out worse than the glowstone does. Of course, I could just swap out the peak over the roof for pale wood. But, anyway, yeah. So it serves still as a functioning port. It's not. It's implied like it's ruined, but yeah, I think they still use it. I don't think the Grey Knights built it though. That's one of the key things. So it's possible that they built it themselves. Got it going again after it had been abandoned. I'm actually looking at this, and this was built prior to the introduction of a full set of blocks for these two, which is why there's a transition as best as possible, and then it's just the grey. This is one of the things, those little jobs that I would definitely like to come back and do, because I think it just stands out too much. You know, it was just, it couldn't be helped. It had to be done a certain way. There's some coral down here as well. Technically my first coral reef, but my approach was weird. Yeah. A couple of boats at least. Probably should be a few more, given how important this is supposed to be. I think I should also put boats out in the ocean as well. Where's that going? That's sinking there, so... this is... So this is... What did I call it? Is it meant to be some sort of Valhalla type thing, a grand hall? I do these roofs occasionally, mostly in snow biomes. They're never usually this fancy. I mean, the fact that you've got bits sticking up from the side like that, it's not my usual fare. Where's the staircase? There we go. Somebody's grand hall. Am I going to find a way out, or am I just getting further and further away from exit? Yeah. Let me out. Here we go. Now, is over here the smallest build I've done? I mean, it is pretty tiny. But not the smallest. I could have sworn there was a little hut on the back of these hills. So anyway, crossing over to here, which is... no, it's gone. I should open a map. The Iberalai. Here we go. And just for the record, Deep Toil is not marked on the map. The name of the town overall is called Craddock though. So there you go. So anyway, we're on the Iberalai. A lie is a rest. It's a monastery where Grey Knights, people who've actually served as part of the organization, can retire. And then that's also where they send young recruits to learn from the retired ones. So we've been passing across the Edomar, which is the East Sea, and we're technically now pushing into the Edocor, which is just the Eastern Territory. Has got a name? Oh, I see a name. See a name? Lockman. Man is just a port. The lock is probably referring to the fact that it's frozen. This was another attempt at standardizing a build, a communal building, houses with a shared courtyard. It's also slightly defensible. They had some concerns about zombie infestation, that sometimes materialized. But yeah, got pretty fancy with this. It's nice. Nice little cozy place. But where we go? This place is the Winter's Whale. I don't remember if it's actually got a proper name that the Grey Knights would use. The Winter's Whale would technically be a translation. I refer to these as mage towers. They're very tall, thin spires, but they have a large protrusion halfway or partway up that's a residence for somebody. Probably named after the mage towers that you find in the World of Warcraft. So this is the actual Winter's Whale. It's nestled into a little bit of wall, a little bit of space protected by rock. As I said before, not much on interiors. Big spaces, a big enough space like this is probably going to get some kind of do-up, maybe a floor pattern and so on, but as you can see there's no attempt to build furniture, anything like that. So you can see the top of this matches this, while the rest is actually quite different. And the reason for that is pretty straightforward. This is one of the 4 oldest buildings in the Empire in terms of when it was built in real time. I think this was here not long after Edorahn was built, the Edomar, the temple that is. And I wanted to just note that when putting up this, just pay a little bit of homage to the older build. No idea who that's supposed to be. That's nice of me. Which way do we go? Let's see. Yeah, we might as well go to Stammen. Yeah, let's go to Stammerton. So Stammerton is a fairly large settlement, you can see. I've tried a different approach here, spacing things out into their own little pockets rather than regimented road systems. This has been heavily based on the stave churches that can be found throughout Scandinavia. And they are wood without nails. They look pretty cool. So I kind of modeled it after them best you can. I really want to use this roof style somewhere else. I really like this. I love the way that it's hanging over. I think this will look great on some extreme hills somewhere, done in larger amounts. Yeah, I wonder where that probably just connects to the road going south. There should probably be a little more in this place, but it is after all an ice biome and plain, snow biome, so I'm not going to go mental about how much is actually here. So going back in the other direction though, we oh, okay, there it is. And you come to this is just one of those random fort locations. Just somebody who lives here. The lords all over the place. And then this is another mining facility. Now we do have here, this is actually an ongoing Christmas project. The first year was the tree. Second year I added the sleigh. Obviously it looks a little bit better when there's actual packages. And then last year somebody was talking about building wreaths in a 5x5 space. And I decided to see just how convincing it could be on a small scale. 3x3. And I think it looks quite nice. I did do some 5x5s elsewhere. But yeah, I think the 3x3 was good enough. This was the first attempt at the tree. Once I'd done it to a certain degree, I was like, no, the tree needs to be bigger. And I also decided it really had to have just a single spot in the middle, which these naturally generated. Sorry, not naturally, I created them, but they're based on, I just kind of put a pillar in, put some plants down, grew the tree, and then extended them. We'll take a look at this as well in a minute. Take a look at this. I can never remember what this place is called, but I've had a tendency with the plains biomes to just flesh them out with farmland. Gets a bit crowded, I'm not happy about that. Go a little bit too far. But all in all, it's okay. Does its job. Really experimenting with colours. Seeing what I can do with the general build technique of stone to wood that I do. Seeing what palettes I can come up with that really stand out. Has this got a name? It may have a name. It's just a question of whether I actually wrote it down. Doesn't look like it. So this is feral, the iron tree. It's a very old tree, obviously. These were probably put in place by the Grey Knights at a later point. Never really sure what this was supposed to be. So like a temple? You know, people supposed to come here and leave offerings? That's why it's not really finished. It's like you're looking at it and like, well, what is it? Apparently old and ruined. So this is Corrahn, the capital of the Grey Knight Empire. There's about 2 phases of building here. The central building that was done first, including the wall. A lot of the buildings inside of this wall. These little extra bits at the front of each cathedral. That was all done in one go, plus the floating ship. And then several years later, I came back and added the statue, the road all going all the way around, except for the northwest quarter, which was already there, and then all of the buildings within the road. Plus, I did the gardens. So the gardens that are inside of the inner wall, they would have been done later. And this is the Colossus. You know, I look at this and these wings look very much like the ones of Edorahn. I wonder if I borrowed it from here. This is the mostly industrial area. There's several facilities for manufacturing. It's a large-scale communal building. I don't know why there aren't lights on top of those. So yeah, multi-floors. Same concept as the previous one in the small village, just several inward-facing structures on multiple levels in this case. 4 levels apparently. I have no idea what this is. Maybe a transport hub, maybe a museum, maybe just an apartment. I couldn't make up my mind while I was building it. Kind of looks nice though. This is actually a previously existing village. I redressed all of the buildings, swapped out all of the blocks, added a couple of extra buildings. May have modified some of the ones that existed. But you can see this is the original. Just had all its blocks swapped. I do this on any village within the borders of the Empire has had this done to it. This one is called Selenium. Now, before we move on, I'm probably going to take us south next. But before we do that, let's see if we can take a proper look at Corrahn, because it's not easy to get a real handle on it when you only have render distance of 16. I think 32 will be enough. Just fading. How much am I going to get? You have to turn it at an angle to see it. There we go. Ooh, it's going to get dark. It's nice. Now I would use shaders. It does help a lot. But they really make the buildings look ugly at night. And my buildings, partly by intent, look really good at night when the lighting kicks in. So we're going to see this now. And then I'm going to take a little AFK before we head south. Alright then. Hmm. Alright then. As I said, we're going to go south next. Probably the least developed part of the empire. I will be doing some work in the south as soon as I'm finished in the end, which actually probably won't be much longer. He said, hoping. There's going to be quite a bit put in here. I'm still kind of really debating exactly what and where. And that tower is going to get overhauled with block changes, possibly some extensions. No idea. I think this is just meant to be a mining facility that I never really got interested enough in building. Probably doesn't help that I'm going to take a wild guess that none of this actually really goes anywhere. It's usually the way that the really large holes near the surface don't go anywhere. I don't know why that is, but it just seems to be the way. Don't get used to this fancy decoration of the minecart ride. It isn't applied equally all across the network. I've been seriously tempted to actually come along and build an actual proper train. 3, maybe 5 wide, basically sitting over both of them. So treat each track as if it was just the line itself, the rail. It's obviously not entirely practical. I would need to do another one going the opposite way, which I'm not particularly keen on. But you know, it might be nice. Because the Empire, the style emerges straight out of Minecraft. So as far as I'm concerned, this is how the Grey Knights got around, except for their fancy flying ships. You know, they didn't have an actual train, but that seems a bit too silly, given what they were capable of. So I figured maybe, you know, I'm just going to have to accept that this is just not the way that this would be done. Yeah, I want to maybe add some extra stuff, make this a little bit more unique. The block changes will help with that, but I'm also thinking about, you know, here, for example, just extending this out further without support. In fact, actually looking at it, maybe get it to come across to the other side. I think it's going to go, yeah, it's just going to miss it. And this one, on the other hand, though, this could do. Yeah, just extend this out, have it come straight over to this side. Perfect height. Could be nice. Let's see. Could include that as well. That'd be nice. For some reason, when I cut through jungle, I have to have a roof over the track. It's like, why? Do I think the rain is too excessive and it needs protecting with a roof? I don't know. I just always do it. So we've entered the Solcor. This is the southern region. Southern central region, obviously. It's pretty light, as I said. The south is the least developed area of the map now. This is Hustle, and let's get past Hustle for now, and actually look at. Oh, I've still got my render distance up to 32, haven't I? I should probably turn that down. Yeah, sorry, skip over that now to look at this. This is one of the other 4 oldest buildings on the continent. You can see how old, in fact, it may actually be the oldest, possibly. This is super primitive. I haven't used stone bricks at all. It's unusual. I'm sure I wasn't in survival. It would have been in create mode, and I really don't understand why I wouldn't have used more. Anyway, I came back later and built Hustle. You've got a little bit of a library going on here. I know I said I don't do internal decoration, which, you know, I don't think this counts. I do, however, if I build a blacksmith, I do like to put an anvil down, things like that. Basic stuff that you'll probably find in the village blacksmith. But you can see here, I would normally, if I was doing this now, I would probably have had a lot of wood over the top and in between, and really done some, done a little bit of decorative work on top of it. Again, I was talking about being born directly out of Minecraft. It's Minecraft's structures, and here we are. This is not a pre-existing village. This is just what I did. I mean, even used 2x2. Wow, it's kind of unusual. Weird. Not happy with this marker, has to be said. It does, however, denote the end of the Solcor, I think. So we're leaving and now entering actual Solorahn itself, the southern portion of the empire. And I'm going this way. It does swing back around and meet itself, but we're going to need to double back slightly, or we will miss builds. This is dragon toil, or long toil rather. Long being taken from the Chinese languages, meaning dragon. Put in a little bit of a dragon shape to it too. Get a little less coil. And then, I don't know if I did it on purpose, but I've just noticed that the furnaces, the smokestacks, do tend to look a bit horn-like when you're looking at it from the as a dragon. And then there's a little mini dragon in the mining facility. Again, I put in infrastructure so people can get down here, or I can get down here when I come back at some point. And you can see, you know, I got to a point where I stopped putting in too much lighting. You know, I put enough down here so that I kind of had an idea about what was here, but, you know, I didn't want to just light the whole tunnel network up. Too safe. You have to do that when I come back in creative. So I will rather. So then, yeah, so there is something over there, but where is it? Gonna be able to see it from here? I know it's there. There it is. Just see it there. We'll be able to take a closer look at that when we circle back around. In the meantime, this road crosses over into... I think this is Corrahn. Cold Desert Hall, which I have been tempted to maybe transition this sand entirely to gravel. Sand just screamed warm, and I feel like, you know, you can see I've already done it. This is not the natural formation. Can I take a, yeah, I just simply remove the top layer of everything. Pretty standard, to be honest. One of those builds where I finished down, I'm like, what was the catch for this? What was supposed to get people excited about looking at this building? It's just a real tight cluster of objects. There's really nothing to it. It's kind of sad because, you know, a lot of time spent building it for it to just sit here and be like, meh. I believe this is natural. I think this is, I call these sanctifications. They're shields, according to the game. Basically areas of land where the top surface has been stripped away to leave the stone behind. I've repurposed them as regions where battles have taken place, and the Grey Knights have scorched the ground in order to remove any chance of contagion. This is me struggling to find some sort of path for, well, for the desert. I think I've got a better one than this. It's much more simple. So this is the Karlberg Toll. Kind of fancy smanchy. It's essentially a mage tower, but, you know, on acid. I've actually just realised I skipped a build 10 or 20 minutes. Well, probably half an hour ago at this point. It was, we saw it in one shot. I turned around, went somewhere else, and never actually went in the right direction to see it. It was only a mining facility, but c'est la vie. Just a little bit of a mining facility. Meant to be self-contained. A lot of buildings are supposed to be like that. The idea is you can be in them and never have to step outside of them to get what you want, which is obviously convenient when you may be facing an upsurge in zombie activity. We're actually just across the water from Staverton. Just there. And, I want to actually build a ship here. The Mammoth. it will have tusks, even though it is a ship. Probably one of my more favorite builds. I'm thinking that, I know that looks weird, but yeah, it's just the fact that I opened up the faces so the light would come down. But obviously that leaves the head two-faced, which is not intentional. There is no in-law explanation for that. We just pretend it's not there because we can't see it. This is one of those moments where a build gave me a lot of grief. While I was building this, I started to think I really should have put it over here. But if it goes over here, it would be facing the lake, and I didn't like the idea that the back would be what you would approach it from, you know. And it's like, maybe it can go across the water here. Looking at it now, maybe it just clears some of the forest. You know, there are options, and I probably still will do it because I really felt like this didn't cut it for what I was after. So when I come back through doing the south, it's probably one of those projects that will be done. Again, it's not proper interior, but there are floors and some amount of decorative work. Yeah. Yeah. It goes up and up, and you get less and less, but bigger and bigger rooms. Not sure why that's open. Oh, they're all open. Okay. Why do they all have 3 doors? Oh, must be a mistake. This is terrifying. This has happened maybe half a dozen times that I'm aware of. It hasn't happened for a very long time. I don't know what caused it. And fortunately, it never happened in the middle of a building. The most I lost was the tiny corner of a single inn at a town. But yeah, this was scary that this could happen. Oh, in case it's not clear, the game has replaced this chunk with one that's nearby. It would look like this. It's identical. It's basically just copied it over from another location. Is that it? Looks like this one. Yeah. Yeah. Not a fun thing to happen. Potential volcano. Caldera, maybe. I don't want to make a full cone out of this, but I could make a small remains of something that had been blown apart. I think this is another volcano potential. Where are you taking me? Some parts of the Empire are going to be left open like this. It's like it's a forest. I can't just go sticking buildings all over the place. There'll be no forest left. So sometimes you're just going through a biome, which is probably where I would want to think about dressing the biomes up a little bit. I don't want to go mental. I don't want to replace all of the trees with custom trees. I want it to still feel like it was a Minecraft world. But maybe I can do something with the ground, put a little bits and pieces of rock in, you know, that sort of thing. Make it a little bit more interesting, visually interesting. So this is the Rumar, the jungle water, the Rumor, sorry, More, not Ma, which is, as I say, this jungle water. This was probably done first while I was going through doing the minecart ride. Everything else was done later. I got quite obsessed with the idea that these, again, this is going back to the idea of doing a little extra for the biomes. And I just had this idea of these worn out rock formations. The smaller ones are usually called Hydra teeth. The bigger ones don't really have a name. So this is the mill in the Rumor, making it the Rumor mill. A little bit of farmland. I feel like there should probably be more farmland for having a mill here. But again, I don't want to tear up the swamp too much. So this is Rumble. It's can't remember what the word bull was supposed to mean. Was it second stop? It's essentially a lie. So it's a monastery for the retired Grey Knights, but also a place of learning for initiates. I like doing this. You've probably all seen spots like this in older maps. Probably don't get these anymore in the newer terrain generation, but yeah, I just like doing them. They look nice. I just like adding something. I extended this at a later date. A lot of the buildings along this road, this rail cart, were put in place as the rail cart was done, and then it was other work was done later. So obviously this all connects through, and you have this temple. And looking at this, was this also built before there were any blocks to do it properly with the grass? With the moss. Usually if I'm going to build underwater like this, I will use the mossy cobblestone and the mossy stone bricks. But I can also be very lazy about that. So it's possible that they were, well, they've always been in the game, so I'm just being lazy with that. But I don't know about the others. All of the slabs and stairs that got added for it. But this actually goes through the mountain. I believe you can actually get out of here as well. There's a few tunnels through the system that let you out. This is not Grey Knight based. I don't know who this belongs to. Possibly the villagers, but that doesn't make sense. This is what you can see from way over there. The dragon toilet is just out of range. I did like the idea that, you know, after doing a lot of the initial building, I really like the idea of you just come along afterwards and you build side roads, forks in the road that go in different directions, and if you go down it, you have to come back, or it goes around in a different direction and connects to somewhere else, and if you do, you know, go either way, you miss something, so you have to go down the other road later. So I'm really keen on building a world that does actually require a level of exploration to see it all. You don't just go down a minecart ride and pass everything. I think this is called Moran and Mamar. That doesn't sound right. I'm guessing when I've actually got the map sat here still. This is actually Mora and Moma. Basically the Moor town and the Moor port. As I just realised, completely ignored the readout. This is a retreat. People, there are many of these, usually high up in the hills, for people to go to in times of trouble. Think of Helm's Deep style stuff, somewhere that you can go to when you're hard pressed, particularly under attack. This actually belongs to the same guy who built the big tower that I said I would dress up soon. It was, however, built shortly after watching the Castlevania cartoon on Netflix. I'd heard of Castlevania, but I'd never seen it before. I'd never seen the castle itself. So I think that was what was involved in being just a little bit more over the top than normal. Anyway. Yeah, as I say, I consider this infrastructure. An empire or a kingdom is going to have small settlements dotted all over the place. So this is one of them. And then obviously we've got a little nearby port. And I think this was one of my attempts at creating a generic boat that I would be able to put in a structure block and use in multiple locations. It's not bad, but I don't feel like I really nailed it. Not enough to use it. Yeah. Try not to forget about coming back to him, but we do have to kind of cross the water and have a build that's actually a little isolated. It will be connected eventually. The southern work will involve putting the road in that will come past this place, as well as other structures. But at the moment, this location is completely isolated. There's no, you can get here, you can ride here, that's not the issue, but there's no marked road or anything. This also obviously needs to be worked on. The place is called Fractal, and it's named after this. This is obviously chunk updates. I will usually refer to it as map corruption. Basically, the game came out with a new update, the seeds changed, terrain generation changed, and bits of the map that had never been completely explored suddenly get loaded on a different seed, and this is the result, unfortunately. Some of them have been disguised, at least partly. You can see here I want to bring a road straight through the middle of this, but yeah, this would probably be easy with World Edit rather than trying to do it in creative mode. This is far too much placement of block. But anyway, this is the Quadrithesia of Fractal. Getting really fancy with the armors on these guys. Kneeling down too, with an arm back holding the cloak. It's quite fancy while still not actually changing very much. You know, they're still very straight-legged, forward and down, and so on. It's very heavily based on the TKA from Star Wars, particularly the helmet. Getting wild with my block choices, really shaping things up with this one. Again, as I've said, big enough space, it gets some level of decoration and a nice floor pattern. but you're not going to find any actual real decoration done. I don't think there's any in the entire empire. Actually, except one. I just remembered. There is one spot where I properly did an interior. It's a very small building. We'll see it. But, yeah, here we are, Grand Hall. Unfortunately, I don't have a way out there. I have to walk back here. Oh, look at that. No windows. Convenient. You can see there are markings for other things. You can see actually I've started to put in a marking along the bottom. Because it's equally shaped, I think the problem is that the ground is not even. So this one is sticking into the ground. And as I said before, I'm not keen on removing terrain. Syllabi. So this is the chariot of Nusan. Nusan is just the region. For some reason I divided the Solorahn into 4 parts. Some of them don't even have anything in, but yeah, I got ambitious with this. I don't think I think this was the first horses I did. And like the figures, these are based on the Steve model. There are only a handful of exceptions. It's approximately the right shape, maybe a pixel less to make it odd numbered, so there would be a center line. There is a neck, because the head sat down on the chest, just wasn't cutting it in terms of the overall appearance. But then I just applied that to the horses as well. So these are just modeled after the Minecraft horse. I think the guy that this represents is actually supposed to be buried here. I think that was the idea. But I've never really thought about who he is and what his story is supposed to be. It wouldn't be hard to find the reference to base it on. Chariots were a major component of warfare for a certain period of time, and I'm sure there were some very famous charioteers that I could call on to borrow their life story. This is Lambton. The chariot was built later, but Lambton was built at the same time as the railroad was done. It's another monastery, another lie. At some point I will actually be passing through here to get to a region. Yeah, I think there's a plains biome. Yeah, I'm going to put something here. It's too big and open for there not to be something there. You know, the Grey Knights are very expansive territory. They're quite capable of moving around in short order, so it just makes no sense that they haven't colonized or built in certain locations. There's also a functioning mine here as well. I'm not sure what's down there, whether it's really marking anything or I just happen to just want to put one in. Yeah, this doesn't look like much. It's getting better. Let's follow the cobblestone. No, this is going to be a dead end. Yeah. starting to get pretty fancy. I didn't want to go through the hills any more than I really needed to. So it does, excuse me, in some places, but I also try to avoid it. It's unrealistic, which I know isn't saying much of Minecraft, but I just thought it would look better to be following the terrain rather than just ploughing through it. So this is another dun. This is the actual first one I built. This is Dun Roman. I don't think I actually said the name of the dun in the north, in the Edorahn region. It's called a cropper. Dun a cropper. The tower is nice. I do like that. A lot of this is just me trying to fill in the space that's available, pushing over onto another hill, just taking up the space and not really having a specific structure in mind. This was a planned extension for sea burials. And then I have no idea what went on back here. Just doing weird things with the towers. Like, are there special people been buried here? I did a sphinx or a partial sphinx, and then I don't know, just decided I didn't even need a proper head on it. I think this is actually some... Oops. Presumably somebody should be buried in it. Doesn't seem to be a way in. Yeah, this obviously needs to be properly finished. But, as I said, the tower I'm okay with. We're going to go this way. This is actually, I think, where the road will come in from Fractal. There's nothing out here except a very small building. And since I want to be thorough, and I would like everything to be on camera for once, here we go. And you can hear that. Probably hear my computer fans kicking in because of the extra loading that it probably just did. Yeah. I'm not even sure what the name is. Let me see if the map's even got it marked. Casa Eli. Oh, there we go. Why Eli? Is this finished? It's not even finished. Why did I leave it unfinished? It's like 30 blocks from being finished. What the hell? Well, let's get back to something that's at least a little bit more complete. So this is the western end of around Solo, the capital of the Southern Empire. The region, the area is called Tridenton. So this is the whole thing. We're at that green dot, and yeah, quite the expanse. I would imagine that this may have started as a readout, that they eventually the city expanded enough that they converted it or became a wealthy region, perhaps, because it's obviously so isolated. The water's not natural. I think all of them were added in order to create these waterfalls. Obviously these days, I'm not sure what would have been available at the time. I think I'm looking at the idea here that there would be an actual reservoir here that would feed this, as well as create the waterfalls. But yeah, I mean, these days there's a lot of extra blocks available. I can imagine, you know, putting dirt and rocks and all kinds of plants that we've got now. Look at this sugar cane holding off the waterfall. Man. Why didn't it wipe it away? That makes no sense. This is another location that needs boats. Boats and boats. Probably at least one should go there. Something smaller here. But anyway, this is moving on. Oh, we've got the fish bridge. The most inconvenient bridge shape ever. But it brings us into Anton, which is the industrial district. There are a lot of different things going on here. Just about everything that needs to be made is made in this location. There are a couple of places I was clearly thinking maybe something would come around here. I probably realized I didn't want to block off. I don't know, actually. I mean, looking at it now, you've got the deep water, but you've obviously got this ledge. And I'm thinking that this could be a good port for the industrial, although I don't have really good access to it from here. I mean, the main road's here. They would have to go straight through this building. Oh man. What's this? The stables? I don't even know what this is. Probably a warehouse. Yeah, maybe I can punch through this. What is that? Marking out rooms that I never did. I do some really shoddy finishing work sometimes. The greenery is marking where the underground line was supposed to go. It would allow you to go from one end to the other. Possibly back again. It's a geothermal power station, which I think would make this a volcano. I think it's artificial. I don't think you can get a lava pool this high up. Water processing. I think this is just a generic mining facility. Let's see, this may be for smelting. And then got one of the more tightly packed populated areas. Let's put the lights back on for a bit. Oh, this does have a name, I can't remember off the top of my head. One of my 2-3 worst boats. You can see the problem I mentioned before. I just make them too deep and not long enough. I quite like this guy though. He looks so snug with his oversized scythe sticking suspiciously out from between his wings. It's a nice front for a boat though, it has to be said. It wouldn't be too difficult to put a structure block down and save it and bring it forward 7 blocks, put a couple of extra layers in. Well, it actually looks like, yeah. At least one more of those, maybe another one. You could do it some good, I think. This is my idea of an apartment block. In an effort to make it look interesting, I have basically stuck things off of every single side that was available. We'll see no windows anyway. You can see I like to work with the odd numbers, so you know the windows are in the middle, so having a 2x2 space like that, I'm not equipped to I'm not equipped to put windows in there. Can't be done. The bridge to nowhere. It was originally meant to basically cross the moor, but ended up building the rest of the district going back the other way. And there is actually technically at least one connection point over here. So it was like, I guess you don't need the big fancy bridge after all. Still, yeah, those look nice. The I Can Go district. Fancy town. One of the very few Colosseums I have. I like what I did with this seating. I like the fact you can actually see through it. Huh. Interesting. Why is this grass? Why is that block missing? What? Yeah, so I'm squeezing in a lot of buildings wherever I can. You're going to see a lot of villages here. This was at a time when you could breed many, many villages by just simply putting lots and lots of doors down. And because I didn't want to just put them all in a little compartment hidden somewhere, I built lots and lots of buildings. And then I would build buildings that I'd have lots and lots of doors inside them. I quite like this design. I felt like this could be something I could use as a standard template that I could unpack from a structure block whenever I need something of a certain size. Maybe convert the top fully to wood. But other than that, it's quite nice. This is an actual village. As usually the case, I replace them. The central well with a 3x3 to match the road system, although obviously the road system has been completely replaced, or almost completely replaced. The walls are blocked to keep the villagers inside, keep them safe. I don't think it worked. Usually they end up all dead, and I can never figure out how it happened. the replacements. I know, because I don't have the UI on at the moment. I think they're actually named the replacements. They are literally intended to repopulate the village. Good lord. Yeah, there are a lot of them. It should be named. Can't see it obviously because the UI's off. Don't look, don't look, don't look, don't look. This stuff I can actually do something properly about now. You can't, you couldn't for a long time do anything about the fact that this was a snow biome now. And even if you clear the snow, it's just going to fall again into a nice square. But now you can actually change the biome using the command in-game. So I can actually change this to be a plains again and create an actual border that's smoother. Which is, you know, kind of helpful here because it wouldn't take much to flatten this back out. It's one of the worst parts of the chunk update corruption because it's just so close to something major. Getting really crazy with the building scheme, don't know why. Really abstract. I'm not even sure what it was supposed to be. Like the function of the building, why it looked so weird. This is the core of the original city. This is why it's stone. I mean, I started building here anyway, but it was intentionally stone as much as possible. Probably too much. I've very, very recently started working on a way to texture the pattern so that I can create a little bit more form, a little bit more interest to the building. But don't expect me to come back and do all over everything again. So you can see there's a nether portal here. There are a couple in the Empire. Now, I had an original nether that had a couple of buildings in it, not much, a couple of ideas, not really done anything about. And then I started, because that portal had access to another portal at the other end of the city, and I was building a thoroughfare in the nether. So I had bits and pieces inside already. But I just decided the nether update has come out. Things are substantially different in the dimension. So I just simply removed that old file, put it to the side, and allowed a fresh nether to spawn. That nether has had one building added to it, and there is no internal connections. So these portals just open out into nowhere for the most part. So I'm gonna get to it, obviously, you know, but it's not a high priority. So that actually brings us to the end of this Solorahn. With the availability of the biome altering command, I know you could do it with a mod anyway, but there's an option that there will be more beyond Solorahn. Just a little bit more. As I'm looking at this now, it'd be very easy to connect these two rivers. I could convert this entire thing back into a plains and have the snow biome start at the taiga. It might work quite well. Now I'm going to teleport back to Corrahn. so we don't have to fly there. It wouldn't take long to get there anyway, but I think it'll be a little bit quicker if we do. See if I can find the coordinates. Here we go, Corrahn. Yeah, I knew that number was wrong. I think it should be 1700, 3500. I'm going to take a little bit of an AFK before I resume this. For those of you who may be watching the VOD, you probably know by now. You probably want to skip forward about half an hour. For those of you who are watching maybe this on YouTube at a later date, well, I cut it all out, so don't worry. Now, so there are options here. We are going to go west. West is quite big. There are multiple regions that I'm going to have to cover. But we're going to go this way because it won't double around. We'll have to come back the way we came. So there's some work that needs to be done here. This, you know, this is just, as I said, there are things still to be done. You know, the empire is not actually finished. I've just been in the end for some time working on that. These are the Rhodes. It's the mining facility / home. I want to redo these hills to be red. I kind of know what I'm going to do with it, how I want to decorate it, generally speaking. Yeah, I want to have them live up to their name. I'm getting more and more keen on terrain alterations that stand out and make the empire more interesting than just being built. Who doesn't love a big hole in the ground? Who doesn't love 2 big holes in the ground? Pretty good for old school generation. Alright, so the Tarosa Warren, that's what it's called. The Red Hill Warren. I'm not sure how much of this Extreme Hills biome will be turned red. It might be a little bit over the top to do it all. So we're going into what is essentially the Waycor, the western heartlands, essentially. It's very broken up between various groups, so it's less cohesive than the Edocor. So we've got, I think this is Veil Toil, or Val Toil, standard stuff. interesting ravine. Naturally occurring mine shaft thrown in as well. Just has to be marked. With you know, a building. Oops. Again, this is one of those cases where I really tried to dress up a biome. I'm obviously standing on its head a little bit. I think I tried to transition back to the sand to imply that something else had happened here, which it had. The Grey Knights pushed back a army coming out of the Nether. They made the mistake of destroying the gate in a very ad hoc kind of, let's just throw an explosive at it. And the result was feedback that tore up the landscape. And some of the debris ended up down here. And it does continue down like this a little way. Transitions into this. Most of this is natural, which is why it's so cramped. But I think there is some point where I come all the way down to a hole that leads to the ooh, nice. Yeah, this is totally artificial. You don't find these in the Empire. Well, not at this height anyway. Yeah, I think there may be an access point to the deep slate here. I punched a hole in the ground for it, but it's I had second thoughts about how I'm going to handle the deep slate, given that it's relatively new. This is quite old, and so is this. Again, these were mostly built when the road was being put in place. There's Valmorel over there. And the statue, the biome alterations, all of the smaller buildings, and this damage. This was all done as part of an overhaul of the region. So Valmorel got extended as well. This garden area wasn't here. And these outlying buildings, all flavor stuff, make it feel like it's an actual place. So this had to be done here because there's basically two hills with a lower level between them, which, you know, just screamed to have a little little settlement built all the way through. I think this may have been added. I'm not sure. I saw this in Discord for somebody else. A member of somebody else's Twitch stream had built one. I duplicated it, made some tweaks. Didn't like where I'd placed it and moved it with a structure block. Left behind these little extra bits. And then rather than destroy them, I just decided that they would become part of the build. It's a one-off. I don't intend using it. It's somebody else's work. I'm not going to build a fleet of these things somewhere. Because, yeah, you know, as I say, somebody else's work. Where am I going to go from here? I think I'm going to cut across into the Witch Haven. We're technically slightly in the Norcor here, but I'm going to do this now because it's a little more convenient. So this is Stoen. He's based on another person's build from another streamer, Reign of Calamity. She built an iron golem, similar design. This one's obviously stone. Hers is bigger as well and hides an iron farm. Mine is on its last legs. An arm has fallen off, its batteries are nearly flat, but it's still got a little left in the tank if it needs it. And
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
Well, if you could help me with it, I would let you build all of my buildings. Shh. The arm can just be picked up and attached back again. So, you know, don't count him out. What's he been named? Where is he? So, yeah, so this is the Witch Haven. It's part of a place called the Morel. This is a large area of swamp and forest. Some of it's been decorated. You know, the swamps obviously had these grandiose mushrooms added. Oh, I never. That's nice. Yes. Blue terracotta makes some nice patterns in its cube form. It's like 3 different shapes there. Anyway, what was I doing? Yeah, so this was started as part of the Halloween project many years ago. One of the last things I did, I think, before part of the last series of projects before I went in the end, anyway. And yeah, I did this, and then later, not long after, actually, came back and did a little bit more. This was based on somebody else's concept that I tried to do, couldn't pull off. Somebody told them, "Oh, you can't do it that way anyway," and they believed them. And I was like, "Oh, sod that. Here's, you know, one of those hold my beer moments." So I built this. It's kind of along the lines of what he wanted, not perhaps as tight as he wanted it. But you know, I think it was a lesson in just don't just think that something can't be done. Try it at least. The person who said that was actually another streamer of Minecraft, and her name was Morgan. RN Choi, doesn't stream anymore. Got her own real life business going on. That's her, old Mother Morgan. So this is based on the Baba Yaga, the witch's hut. Took massive liberties with it. The hut itself is based on a building by Morgan. This is me incorporating her into my world. I've done this with a couple of streamers that I watched so far. Others will be done in the future. Got the grand spell book here. Contains the 8 most powerful spells in the universe. The last one is a cure for your aching neck. Quite pleased with this. Came out quite well. It's a pity the webbing is so obscured. Now this is the sort of thing I'm talking about with the biome. I haven't removed every single normal tree, but I put in a pocket full of bigger ones. And just played with the area and dressed it up a little bit. Spawned a bunch of frogs who all disappeared. No idea where they went to. I don't think they can despawn, but I never found them. This is actually one of my favorite places in the Empire. It is super peaceful being here. This is the claws of Dagath. Not his actual hand. He's not this big. I had planned to string a cauldron, like build a big cauldron between the fingers, but well, you can see that there's no realistic way to string up a cauldron between these positions. So, but you know, maybe I can work on it later. Playing around with the default mushrooms that exist. Finding ways to just tweak them a little bit. Looks like I missed one. 2. Yeah, I was quite pleased with this. Probably the sort of thing I would include in other swamps. Probably need to be done by structure block. Again, one of those things that, you know, some kind of world editor will probably be more ideally suited for than building them by hand. You know, the work's been done. I'm not going to come up with some grand variation on these by building them all by hand, so why bother? It's custom Mega Tiger. This is not natural, you don't find the Mega Tigers in the Empire. The map is too old. There's a fallen world tree here. That's the roots. Bits of it broken off here, and then part of the end. It's been used as a house. I don't think Brennan's around anymore. I had to recreate him at least twice, because he likes to leave the house. And then gets killed by zombies. Take a quick sneak around here, because I think this is technically the smallest building I've got in the entire Empire, being 4x4. So this thing I've been floating around next to is actually the Throne of the Elements. This was... So I think this was literally the last thing I was doing before going in the end. It is... Well, it's something that Aurelian, Lord of the Elements, made. He created it by pulling up a piece of the ground in the middle, and then that's held up by the air. You know, when he did all of the extra water and fire stuff as well. So it was really him playing with his powers, seeing what he could do. The space is completely natural. I haven't opened it out or closed anything in. Obviously this was not there, that's completely artificial. And the damage to the ground where it was pulled out from, obviously that's not natural either. You know, the lava and the water were added. I think maybe some of the water was here already. And this is the point where I actually started playing with the command for changing biomes. This is actually a cherry blossom biome now, which is not possible in the normal Empire because, again, it's too old to have such a thing. And then you've got a mountain grove. That's not right. What is it called? Anyway, one of those up here. Very handy stuff. I tried to adopt the habit at this point of writing the little bits about the build. But, you know, after doing 3 or 4 of them, I suddenly found myself going into the end. So I've been in there the whole time and I haven't had any real opportunity to write anymore for any other builds. I'm not sure if this has a name. It's a quadrithedra. It's basically the concept is a circle, 4 halls connected by a ring with a central tower. With the central tower often actually connecting the outer ring as well. I build one of these for every new wood type or block set that comes available. So obviously this was done because of the new mangrove. Same is the case for ships. I'll often build a new ship using new block types. Ships are almost always unique. You won't find another ship that looks exactly like this. And I don't mean the color choices, I mean the actual shape. They're all slightly different. What are we going to do? We're going to go this way first. So we're coming up on an area called the Valmorel. This is the Swamp of the Dead. Seems to have been some civilization here that was destroyed some time ago. There's very little left of them. It's actually a nod to the swamps in Valheim. The goop in the trees being one such nod, and then I actually have one of the Draga dungeons, complete with mud blocking some of the exit entrances. It actually opens out onto this ravine down here. So you can crisscross backwards and forwards, work your way through, and eventually come out to the end of it. I think I meant, well, not meant, but it'd be nice to put some, you know, spawners down here. That'd be good. Spawn a bunch of bog. There's more behind it, but I'm not going to bother knocking the mud out of the way. No, that shouldn't be there, I think. That means it's a bit difficult to find this. So I give people cookies if they make it there. You can see I reused the mushrooms, or maybe I did it here first and used them again in Witchhaven. We'll go back up in a minute because we're going to look at the throne of the Maudel. It's one of the oldest places in the Empire in terms of the internal lore. So this is Sorrahn. Sorrahn was a settlement outside of the scope of the Empire. It was ruined by Dagath, the Lord of the Earth, one of the children of Aurelian. We'll take a look at that one afterwards, but actually no, probably take a look at this. No, we'll stick here. So the Grey Knights took over once the town had been destroyed by Dagath. By then, the people had already moved over to the Redoubt over here, where they built a new settlement, and they kind of refused to come back to Sorrahn because they're afraid that Dagath would come back. Which, to be honest, is not much of an issue now because Dagath is dead. Not that he's a villain or anything. Well, there's quite a bit of a story going on here. I really can't tell all of it at the moment. That would be going overboard, but yeah, there's a whole full-blown story going along with the destruction of Sorrahn and the aftermath. This is a song. It begins with the death of Dalek. Oops, let's put that back at the beginning. This is actually the hut that Dalek lived in. She was a witch, and they killed her because they blamed her for what was happening. But it was entirely their own fault, nothing to do with her at all. Unfortunately, she was the lover of Dagath, and he was not happy. On the verge of destroying Sorrahn, he was stopped and left, and it took some time to find out what had happened. In the meantime, the slimes started acting up in the Morel again, or the Valmorel. The Grey Knight's now in a position to actually investigate. Eventually tracked down part of the source anyway. Slime had coalesced around one of the skulls of the children of the earth, or at least a dead child of the earth. And was going mental. And they actually discovered the source of the slimes and the problems that they were having. All going on down here. Which way do we go? We'll go this way. A ravine filled with slime, which explained the slime excursions, but didn't explain why they were so hostile. And more exploration eventually revealed the truth. Someone, somehow, had put the heart of a Netherlord into the slime, and it was poisoning it, making it much more aggressive than it usually is. Now, unfortunately, the intention had been that you would be able to follow these tunnels all the way into the deep slate. It would be a custom handmade entrance, because that's the only way you can actually get into them. I haven't done what the point of that was, which was to do the body of the Netherlord. That could be still something done in the future, but I am still debating what I'm doing with the deep slate regions in terms of how it fits into the Empire. So until I'm done with that, I'm not going to be able to actually come back here and finish that side of things. Oops, dead end. So they realized that Dagath had killed the Netherlord, but that didn't explain where Dagath had gone. And the witches of the Morel was saying that they couldn't find him anymore, and there was a suspicion that he had also died in the fight, but there was no body with the Netherlord, and the reason for that turned out to be, unfortunately, that the people who took the heart out and used it to poison the ravine of slime also removed the Netherlord's brain and stuck it in Dagath's body. So, kind of turning him into a bit of a zombie, I suppose. This is generally what he would have looked like. Maybe a little bit different color. These tentacles coming out of his head were part of the Netherlord. The Netherwart probably a sign of the corruption as well. But the rest of him is pretty much as is. I'll have to remember that. So he resurfaced this corrupted version, and having corrupted several of the Earth-based elemental creatures, like the Children of the Earth, he basically led an attack that the Grey Knights intercepted, and with the help of the World Strider, they were actually able to kill him. Unfortunate, but you know, he was already dead, in fairness. Wait, did I use Nether? Wow. I actually made use of the reinforced deep slate. Weird. Well, 3 blocks is better than none. So we're actually next door to the Maudel, which I mentioned earlier is the oldest place in the land. It is considered to be the birthplace of everything in the land. This is where the testificates were born, or the testificat, named by Dagath, who thought they were a pain in the ass. I'm going to put a book in here actually, because there's a story I've been working on that will explain some of what went on with the villagers in their early years, explaining things like they were taught enchanting by Dagath, or by Aurelian rather, and then they used the enchanting to start making war on each other. And Dagath noted that they were very troublesome, which to them in their word language would have been tes difficatus. This is a statue of Aurelian. It's only loosely based on him. They modified the head themselves to be a reflection of somebody who thought they were important anyway. So this was a desert. I used the biome command to turn it into a mangled swamp. I actually saw my first frog the other day. It took ages to see one. I thought they'd spawn more often, but it took forever. You know, I was building here for a long time after converting it to mangled swamp, and I just expected them to show up sooner. I mentioned this is where everything was born. That includes Aurelian and his 4 children that he made. The cradles for each of them are around here. One's down there. That's the cradle of the Lord of Fire. It's the birthplace of the Lord of Air. And then over there is the birthplace of the Lord of Water. Oh, there's my froggy. And this is actually where Aurelian himself was born. Nobody seems to have made Aurelian, he just seems to have emerged. This is the geode out of which he was born. At the same time that he was here, another creature was being created. This is Oricon, the remains of his geode. and actually the rest of his geode is actually physically part of his body. I reckon the gold crab. So this is a miniature reef as far as I'm concerned. The first one I did, the proper first one, is in the north and much bigger. But yeah, there's all of the biomes are here. Again, using that biome command, I was able to create frozen waters, the more temperate waters, grade it out slightly. This allowed tropical fish to spawn in amongst all of the coral, I think. I'm sure they're here, I've seen them. I'm sure I saw one floating around underneath Oricon a moment ago. I know they're here. Anyway. There we go. It's nice. Bibbidi bobbidi. I think this is actually the exact location where the Lord of Water was born, Corrahn. Well, that's one of his names. He's got two names because he's split in two. But that's lore for a proper lore video, I think. I'm going to cut back this way, and actually, yeah, I'm going the right way. Yeah, this is all going to be done and handled as part of the completion of the ruin of Sorrahn. I need more buildings showing off the ruin, and as well as some buildings that have been converted. I want one of the ruined towers to be converted into an observatory. I come all the way down here. I mean, it's just a fort guarding a road. Statue marking the entrance into the Sorrahn. But yeah, kind of went around the wrong way with this. So this is Cantor. It's a it's the redoubt where the people of Sorrahn retreated and then expanded from to their own little town, a new settlement out here. What on earth made them think that they were safe here, in a mountainside, on a mountainside from the Lord of the Earth? I don't know, but they felt better. So we have a naturally spawned desert temple which I've heavily dressed up, which is hard to see because it's supposed to be ruined, and unfortunately ends up just looking a complete mess. It may have been moved slightly to make it on a proper setting that I can use. for building. But I'm not sure. I think I may have gotten away with leaving the core untouched, except for raising these chests up. I think the actual floor was 2 blocks lower. I'm going to show you this, but we'll have to look at it another time. Yeah, this is the western route. It goes all the way to the Western Empire. All of it underground. So yeah, this is a naturally spawning temple. The loot inside these chests is what was here. It basically serves as a necropolis, a minor one. This one's ruined because it was probably full and then abandoned. However, there is also here a heavily decorated set of tunnels. I need to find the way in. There's 4 or 5 entrances. I think this is meant to be the main one. So yeah, it is really decorated up down in here. There are multiple switches for color schemes, depending on which part of the system you're in. It goes down quite low. I hid some stuff down here. There were like tools belonging to an explorer called Marjorie Ellen. And I think the only one that's missing is her diary from the last chest. But yeah, it's quite the maze. There are multiple ways around. This is where it all started. It was not supposed to be anywhere near this elaborate. What happened was, I came down here, found this ravine, found the end of the ravine, and was like, this just looks like it would be a nice place to nestle a large geode. So I did. And then I started doing bits, and I'm like, well, I can't just stop it like that, that's silly. And that's how you end up decorating the entire ravine and the entire tunnel network that connects to the ravine. Eventually I had to start blocking holes and just going, that's it, I'm not going any further. But yeah, the place is called Death Vault. No, Verdette, sorry, the Verdette. The Verdant Deep. Or the Green Deep, rather. As I say, there is multiple offshoots for the tunnels. Things were hidden down here. The ultimate goal was to retrieve Marjorie Ellen's diary and return it to the library at Sorrahn. I really have only shown you a fraction of it. It goes deeper and there is more. How do I get out? Oh, come on. Please let me out. I did leave entrances in other locations so you could more directly get to some of what else is down here. Yeah, like this. Yeah. I think they expanded in the necropolis, included more areas. So there's buildings down here too as well. Not much, just a little. Now, I'm actually going to call it for today. I've been going for 3.5 hours, give or take some breaks. We still have half the Empire left to go. No way I can finish doing it today, and I need to just call it. So I'm going to knock it on the head here. Pick this up tomorrow for part 2 and hopefully get through the rest. Let's leave us here. anyway, thanks to those who stopped by and lurked, and those of you who may be watching the VOD later wondering where the building is. I will continue this tomorrow, and hopefully finish it tomorrow. I don't want it to drag on for 3 nights. But yeah,